Welcome to Growing Bremerton Together with Mayor Patty Lent. My guest today is going to be Bishop Larry Robertson. He is the pastor, the minister, the leader of Embassy Apostolic Church. Stay with us. We're learning about him and what's in his future. Welcome to Growing Bremerton Together with Mayor Patty Lent. My guest today is Bishop Larry Robertson. He is not only the current leader for Emmanuel Apostolic Church, but he also is the creator, and he was the person that really formed that church. Welcome, Bishop. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We're going to learn about where you grew up and how you landed in Bremerton, first in Tacoma, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a little boy?
As a little boy, I grew up in Texas. Mm-hmm. It's a little town not far from Tyler, Texas, in that area. And I moved to California when I got out of high school. Mm-hmm. And from there I was drafted.
The military.
I was drafted in the Army, and I was sent to Fort Lewis. And getting out of Fort Lewis, I attended the school there in Tacoma Community College, and then ultimately Pacific Lutheran University. Mm-hmm. And there was a wonderful mentor that I met in Tacoma, Bishop C.E. Montgomery, who had a little church at that time. And I was just inspired by him, and I was inspired to work with him. Mm-hmm. And so I did that, and I was an X-ray technologist. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, somehow somebody invited me to go in sales, and so they recruited me out of the hospital work into sales, and so part of my territory was Bremerton and Kitsap, and so I was inspired to kind of branch out and do a work here in Bremerton about 39 years ago, in fact.
So were you faith-based as a youngster? And
but
theology wasn't.
Well, as a youngster, I was not anything based.
A little guy.
A little guy growing up, but I didn't have, my parents weren't, they were good people, and they loved God, but we weren't churchy. Mm-hmm. And so I think that for me, that came for me after I left home and got them on, became...
My parents weren't, we didn't go to church with parents, but I got involved in a spiritual need.
Yeah.
And so my sister and I went for 8 years in a row without missing a Sunday, and not once with a parent.
Oh, okay.
We just that was a solace or something that we needed. So with your mentor and being in Bremerton, this is where you kind of started your church.
Yeah. Oh, it was. Yeah, it was Navy Yard City. In fact, I can remember feeling inspired to start the work, and I wanted to go to Spokane, but there was something in me that said, no, this is. I felt God saying, I want you to be in Kitsap, in Bremerton, and I was in sales, and I'd seen this place, and I didn't know where I was going to go. So I was kind of anxious, and I was saying, Lord, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to ride around this city, because I didn't really know the city.
Right.
And I want you to tell me where you want me to start this work. And that's
what
I did.
You landed at a perfect spot.
Well, I drove around, and the first place we went was on Madrona Street there in Navy Yard City. Mm-hmm. It was an old, dilapidated house, and I couldn't see it good. And I felt inspired. God said, "This is where you're going to start your church," and so it was at night, and so I couldn't see it very well. So I came back the next day. Man, it was terrible, but it had a high pitch on the roof, and we took that little old church, and it's still there. It's there on Madrona Street there now. We sold it ultimately to Larry Keller. That's where the Madrona House name came.
It is the Madrona House.
And that's where that name came from. And so we've, refurbished it and did it up, and beautiful. It's cute as a bug's ear. And that's how we, but prior to that, we were in an apartment, and then we had a little storefront down on Callow. And ultimately we graduated up to that little house church, and then we bought the property on 6th Street downtown, and have you know, and we
remodeled that a lot.
Yeah.
You've been totally immersed, as you talk about Bremerton, in the needs of the people that live here. And so I've seen the remodeling that you've done. I've been fortunate to be not only for church services, but you also started Ladies in Red. There was a need for the women in the church, not just the congregation, but throughout the community, that you had messages you wanted to. And so how did that name come about?
Well, you know, at one point we were going to do it in
October.
Well, we were going to do it in February, Red, and then Black History Month was kind of forced us out of that month. But my first wife, Opal, who you worked with you there at the courthouse, and very beloved, came up with that name, Women in Red, and she was concerned about the young women, and she was just concerned about women education. And being empowered as a lady, and so every year that in fact that Women in Red is my current wife Lillian, who took that baton and has done an exceptionally good job. I've been blessed to have two wonderful ladies.
You have been, and your children say the same thing. 7 children.
Yeah.
And I did work with Opal. She was clerk of the board for the county commissioners and had worked a number of years before getting cancer. She was diagnosed with cancer.
Right.
It was, it didn't last very long.
Yeah.
It was a pretty sudden event. But when you had her memorial, I think half of the county, it was an amazing event.
Yeah.
And it left quite an emptiness in your heart. So you put everything, that's when you started buying building, you started deciding about a new activity center, because you were really at the throngs at West Park.
Well, you know, I served, after Open, we had been married for 41 years, and I had served with the Housing Authority there at the time.
You were still on their board of directors.
Exactly right, and they was getting ready to tear down the old community center. And I said, let's don't tear down the community center. Let's keep that. And they said, well, we'll build it back. Now, I'm not a hater.
Oh, no, I know.
Because I understand that, some decisions just have to be made, and I certainly appreciate all of the good work that the Housing Authority does there with Kurt Weiss and all of the gang. But I just felt that, I felt bad that center would not be there. Not only that, but there was a time when I was invited by the Bremerton School District. There was a levy that they was trying to pass, and so I had an opportunity to go around in my community and talk with parents about trying to support this levy. And what I saw, I had the education I got when I looked into some of these houses and how there was such a need among these kids and the families, and my heart was just pricked to say, you know what, church has really got to be about servicing a community. It's we got to do the work of God. We've got to not just do the work of the church. The church can be the church of a field or the church of a force. Church of the field is where you can do all of your business only in those 4 walls. But when a church becomes a force, you then you match the need with the skills of the giftings. You got a young kid that can't read, and you got a teacher that's sitting, 2 or 3 rows over, and so you try to match that, and you understand from a pragmatic, standpoint of how to make what is your role in the community?
That attachment.
Yeah, how do you go out and really, I think every church should really want to make people's lives better, and I think your task as a pastor to really think about that. Now, how is it that, and every church has got an assignment because it's the body fitly joined together. We don't all do the same thing, but what is the calling of that particular house, and how does it impact the people that goes there, and how does they impact the greater community? Because if it's just a matter of just coming together,
having a sermon, having songs, collecting, and goodbye.
People's lives, you know, the young fellows in our churches got to be impacted by the older guys and the young ladies and all of that. And you know, you would think that just comes with the territory, but you really do have to kind of get a revelation knowledge and say, hey, this is really what I should be doing. This is really what the role of the church is. And so
your sphere of influence has really expanded, and I saw, you know, you have a program on television, you have lots of very talented people, and you, as you see, if you see a need, for some reason they seem to be charged. Some of the things that have been developed through your church and your leadership, the young students that are in the Jaguars.
Yeah.
You've got the mimes.
Right, and the Jag. There's a Jaguar who is the track team, and then the Jazz.
They do the jazz.
Deborah, does a very good job with those kids. And, you know, the arts is something that is really popular. And in fact, this year we have one of the projects that's being done by Kitsap Leadership. Is we're working in conjunction with one of those groups that they've gone out and they've got an instructor for, I think it's 13 to 15 students that's going to learn how to do tap dancing.
Boy, you could bring that back. That would be fun.
Yeah, and so we are pleased with that. And of course, Karen, you know, with that Living Life Leadership program. I mean, you said it. We got talented people that really have a heart to do things. And you know, and I'm talking about really has got a passion and will make a sacrifice for the things that they believe in.
Right.
And that inspires me. When I see a Deborah Jackson, or I see a Irene Sincere, or I see a Karen Vargas, any of those, Tara, all of those ones, that the programs we have. And of course, we've got now a men's mentoring group up in the middle school as well as the high school. Robert Body, we brought him back with Keith Jackman. And also, one of the things we are doing with that male mentoring piece is that we've hired a young lady, Tiffany Reese, out of Seattle, that we're working with a curriculum because we're wanting to have those that will mentor to be taught or
go into that secondary education. You know, sports.
Exactly right.
For so many youth, they like the sports, whether it's soccer, football, baseball. But without that academic and the curriculum that's going to get them through, even our football players with the Seahawks, they have a short lifespan in a career. And they have to have that basic, or they have to have a career field.
Right.
So you've got gems, and you've got young men now. I think there's over 200 that are involved in these programs.
The gems, now that's Harriet, and she does a wonderful job. Now Harriet, her experience grew out of that with I think it grew out of that with Robert Body, and when he was doing the men, and he encouraged, I think, Karen and
to get the girls.
Karen and Harriet to do that, and then Karen is doing Living Life Leadership, and Harriet is doing a wonderful job with those gems. And so it's a lot of good things that's happening.
We have great results. I know that Living Life Leadership goes back to Washington, D.C., or they go to Chicago. They go to different national programs, and it's kind of like teach the teacher. 2 or 3 students will come back, and then they'll share that experience. And it just is like a wave. Everyone benefits from that. And I know lots of people that donate, that have an opportunity to take and support that. So let's bring us up to...
And not only that, but they go like at different functions up on Bainbridge Island. Karen, as you know, she's involved with up there with Cynthia Sears up there with the Bainbridge Island Museum. And in fact, that's how we got it. That's how we got encouraged to take our kids in the summertime to Bainbridge Island Arts Museum, and to be involved even with some of those activities up there. Summertime, our kids serve up there when they have functions, and so it's just a wonderful
nice
experience.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Bainbridge was the first area to have a Martin Luther King
Mm-hmm.
roadway.
Right.
So it was Karen Vargas,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the students. We must have had, I'd say, 15
Mm-hmm.
of the young people that are going to be living when you and I are not around.
Mm-hmm.
And they came down, they said, well, Bremerton, you're the biggest city in the county.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you have? And we went through, it took us over a year,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
We went out to the public,
Yeah.
and exactly where you're building the new
Right.
Marvin Williams
Right.
Activity Center. And I learned from Faye Flemister, who used to be city council, that was the hood. At one time in this city, there was an area in the city that a lot of our African American kids grew up. They hung around, and to have a street named and to have this area totally,
Yeah.
it's going to be revolutionized.
Well, we appreciate your effort and your persistence on that. To be able to recognize and honor Dr. King like that. And then, you know, the thing that we want to do in terms of building that center is to further honor him by, Dr. King was a doer.
He was.
And I think that we want to honor his legacy by bringing that excellence to that place, because the Marvin Williams Center will bring, it'll do the educational piece, it'll do the economic development piece, working with the Olympic College and
And
all
your
of that.
sports activities?
Right, because that'll be the home of the Jaguars and the Jags. The excellence that we wanted to bring to that area, because if you know, that area typically was where people would come, and you know, some of the less fortunate would come, and homeless and so forth. And I think that what we are going to bring to the city with is educational opportunities for kids and economic development opportunities for kids, and also the 501c3s, and also working with all of the 501c3s,
Right.
Coffee Oasis and others, working with all of the population. But what we wanted to do to bring to that area is bring excellence, because
Exactly.
I mean, you know, so we want to, everywhere we go, we like to make a difference, because you not only just preach it with your mouth, but you preach it with what you do.
And that doer that we talk about,
Yeah.
Martin Luther King, I do know that the building, and we're going to show the artist rendering, and then it's under construction. We're hoping to
we're
open up
excited.
in the
September.
fall,
Yeah,
September.
yeah.
So when the kids are through the summer and ready to go back to school, they've got some place to come
Right,
after school.
right.
On weekends, I'm very excited about what's
we're
happening,
excited. We're
and I
excited.
know that you are,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we just had, I attended one of your functions, and I'm going to talk about your daughter that is extremely talented. Well, Tina, it was called Hats Off. And it was the kind of,
yeah.
we continue to have fundraisers. All the things that are happening within your church and within our community are requiring additional funds than just collected by the city. And so as we go out and we find supporters for this, it was the dressiest. They had snow
The helium-
balloons, helium balloons,
The-
but they had hats, and
Yeah.
it was a top hat.
Yeah.
Some were sequined, and they throughout the entire evening, it was hats off,
Yeah.
and it was the most creative idea.
Yeah.
Everybody was impressed.
Yeah.
You raised, I think, a good portion.
yeah,
You did
yeah,
very well on
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And so these are fun things. We need to make sure that the audience knows when events are taking place, and it doesn't matter who's supporting it or who has it. Our very next one, of course, as this plays, the month of February is African American or Black History Month.
Right.
We've got Martin Luther King coming.
Yeah.
But I also want to talk when we had Katrina and that terrible hurricane. It was Kitsap County and one church, one family. I don't know if you led that, but we got together and we housed 600 people that were without homes, that came up here. Some stayed with us.
Right.
Some went back when it was rebuilt. But those are the types of things, when
Right.
there is a need,
Right.
I love this community.
Yeah.
I know that you do because you have all kinds of programs. You'll bring in a speaker, you'll bring in someone to entertain us, and partly now we're having also another awards, and this is the Washington State African American.
Yeah. Deborah does a good job.
We're having all women this time.
Yeah.
Your wife, Miss
Oh, my
Celinda, is
wonderful
being
wife.
honored.
Yes.
We've got, and it's 6 years they've been doing it. It's more than just Bremerton and Kitsap. It's Seattle and it's the state, and they've always held it in Bremerton. We're so honored that we are a choice spot for people to come and review the people and accomplishments that they've done.
Yeah.
We've never done all women, so this is exciting.
Well, you know, Deborah does this, and Deborah Jackson, she does it, and she's, you know, she's a visionary like that, and she brings that, and the women are excited. Seattle is the ladies come from Seattle, and I think that one of the things that I think we have to do wherever we are. Derek Salisbury is that guy's name.
It is.
One of the things that we have to do, I think, is to always try to know what your purpose in life, even a city. If we can understand what is the original intent for the city and go back to that. What happens is people will derive or have a lot of appreciation for who they are. Well, it's just like a family. If you can understand for the original intent, go back to that and celebrate that.
That legacy.
That legacy, because, you know, I see people talk about Washington and in the rain, and, you know, I talk about the good things about where we are, and I talk about the good things that we can do. Because, you know, if we were fortunate enough to be here, this is a good place to raise kids.
It sure is.
This is a good place to instill values. This is a wonderful place to get educated about nature. This is a wonderful place to be in this whole little bastion of the Bill Gates and people that made it, and you know, it's a place where ideas flourish. And see, this is how I feel about Bremerton and Kitsap. I feel that there's so much opportunity here. That
We've just scratched the surface.
Just scratched the surface, and I mean, man, there is opportunity in Bremerton. That's why when we started remodeling our church downtown, we could have gone anywhere. I mean, we didn't have to stay in Bremerton, but I'm telling you that when you get in the spot where you're supposed to be, and you understand the assignment, you derive and you get satisfaction from doing whatever it is that you're called to do. Just like you as a mayor, you've done a wonderful job, and things that you've done for the city. People say, well, you know, it's just like trying to assign things to a child when they're young. No, there's a God-given talent that has to come out. And when you hit that spot, when you get to that place where I know what I'm supposed to do, and this is my assignment, there's a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction. It's called purpose.
Purpose.
When people in life, there's a lot of doctors that are not happy. There's a lot of professional lawyers and others. There's a lot of preachers unhappy. When you find where you're supposed to be, not where you've been assigned by parents or other folks, but when you get into that place that you're saying, this is my God-given time, people know it. You put Michael Jordan in a kitchen somewhere, but put a basketball in his hand.
That's exactly right.
And when that talent comes out, when that purpose comes out, you put a camera into the cameraman's hand. I mean, wow.
Right. That passion is really what leads us. And I think the opportunity that you're creating throughout is to recognize either sports or art or even the scholastic. There's going to be some very smart people that are going to be doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, you might say, and they're going to have an opportunity and that chance. We haven't had that. And I can't applaud you more and the people that you've surrounded yourself with.
Oh,
so,
I feel blessed. I can't say enough about the people, Tina, and the ministers, all of the ones that I can't say enough about the people that I serve, because that inspires. And my wonderful wife, Lillian, I mean, she's just, you know, she's all over this thing. She wants every child to be educated. She comes from a family of 12, my wife, and all of them was educated. All of them has got degrees, and so she just sees the possibility that we want all of the kids that we are, all of the ones that we serve, and beyond, not just in the church, but we want to bring opportunity, and that's really what it's not a big deal. It's not a feather in the cap. It's just what we should be doing. It's our reasonable service.
And you're doing it well. I know that with the loss of Opal and with Miss Lynn coming into your life, she had not been married before, so she wanted a God-fearing man. Couldn't have picked a better one.
Praise God.
Lots of encouragement from family and friends.
Yeah.
I happened to sit next to her when she was first here, and she was here on a presentation on health and wellness for women. You are a couple to honor. You are a couple to admire. And I just want to thank you for being my guest today. At a later time, we're going to have Miss Lillian on and talk about some exciting things, but we'll do that closer to the opening of that Marvin Williams Center.
I'm pleased to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Bishop, you are a grand person, and we're going to watch as you move through the community and be our piper. Thanks for being with me.
God, thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you. And audience, we'll see you next time on Growing Bremerton Together with Mayor Patty Lent.
Thank you.